Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving straight on and switching focus as we continue on WFS Live powered by Ronaldo. Day 5 of 5. If you made it this far, incredibly well done. But do keep the energy levels up because we're going to need them. Now we're going to continue with a discussion on a brand's involvement with women's football. We've seen women's football enjoy some excellent growth over the past few years, as discussed earlier in this virtual conference, through the 2015 and the 2019 World Cup. Many drivers to that growth, of course. Having incredible figureheads and role models like Megan Rapinoe, of course, would be the most famous of the lot. That certainly helps. But there are some brands that have really given that turbo boost to women's football. Think of the likes of Coca-Cola, Barclays, Nike, and in particular, Visa. They really proved their commitment by agreeing a partnership with UEFA Women's Football, the first ever sponsorship deal dedicated to the women's game in UEFA's 63-year history to run until 2025. That is incredibly, incredibly significant. But let's not get this wrong. It's not just about pumping money into the women's game. It's about bringing out the stories of the individuals. For example, Denmark's Nadia Nadim. She was born in Afghanistan. She began playing football when she moved to Denmark as a refugee after the Taliban executed her father. But she speaks 11 languages. She plays for Paris Saint-Germain, and she's also training to be a doctor. In any walk of life, she is an impressive individual. And it's those kind of stories that really help give women's football the visibility it needs to take a place in the top flight of sport. And all fans need is to actually have access to seeing the sport for what it is right now. High quality, top athletes, incredible storytelling, and positive values. And of course, partnering with the right brand can really help women's football achieve that, especially if the brand can come up with those super activations which bring the partnership to life and engage fans in a relevant and authentic way. So this session is entitled Visa and Women's Football, Partnerships as a Catalyst for Change. In partnership with Visa, and your panel of speakers, you can see them here, is as follows. Former England international, TV and radio pundit and Visa consultant Carney, digital marketing and sports sponsorship leader at UEFA Kayleigh Grieve, current Arsenal captain and Scotland vice captain Kim Little, and your moderator, senior manager of sponsorship and marketing at Visa, Liesel Jolly. Liesel, what a panel you've got. We're looking forward to this one. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, really exciting, amazing panel today. So first things first, obviously, I think everyone is aware of how partnerships can drive growth for women's football. But the first thing I wanted to do was highlight the difference I think I find really interesting between the definition of sponsorship and partnership. So I looked this up and I found that a sponsorship exists when one entity provides financial support to another to achieve promotional advantages, whereas a partnership means two or more organisations who work together with joint interests. And so I think sponsorship is the definition, but partnership is really the goal, and that's definitely how we feel at Visa, and we have such shared values with women's football and the people we partner with. But reflecting back over the last couple of days, it's been really, really exciting, amazing sessions. And I think there's a real sense of excitement coming from the return of sport. So, Kim, over to you as our current footballer on the panel. You're the one back in training now. What's it like?
Yeah, it's obviously great to be back. I actually had surgery just before lockdown, so I used the time away from football and not having games to obviously recover for that. And, I'm in a good place and return to pre-season with the team over the past couple of weeks. And we're going through phase 1 of our return to play protocol. So, yeah, it's just great to be back. And we'll start moving into the second phase and third phase over the next few weeks, heading into the start of our season, which, begins with the Champions League at the end of August.
Yeah, cannot wait for that. And Karen, you're one of the few lucky people at the moment that's allowed back in stadiums. You're doing the commentary for the Men's Premier League. And little plug, you'll be on BBC One tomorrow lunchtime. But how does it feel being back watching live sport?
Thanks for the plug. Yeah, I'm just really privileged. I'm in that stadium and there's probably 300 people. I'm one of those lucky people to watch live sport. So I walk in, I'm really humbled, and it is challenging being in massive stadiums and 300 people in a 60,000 seat stadium like I was on Wednesday. But like I said, I'm really grateful, and I've missed football, so I'm lucky to have it back.
Amazing. And Kayleigh, from your perspective as the rights holder, obviously we're thrilled that the Women's Champions League is back in August in Spain. But you must have had a challenging few months. So what's it been like and how different will it look this year?
Yeah, well, it's still an ongoing process, to be honest. But with Kim's word return to play, these are some of the new words that we've learned in our vocabulary for the last few months since COVID hit. So yeah, the project has always been aimed at making sure that we complete the season that we started. For the Women's Champions League, that meant that we paused right before quarterfinals kicked off. So the concept that is going ahead now is that we have the 2-week window in August where we will run the games over those 2 weeks and conclude with our finalists. So, I mean, it's so much part of my job, but certainly a lot of people working hard at UEFA from a medical perspective to make that a safe environment, something that we can do safely for the players first and foremost, and all the staff involved in the matches. But yeah, I think it'll be exciting. I think it does offer an opportunity that if you try and look at the positives, to see all those matches ran over a few week window where there's not a lot of competition as such, to really try and push and get eyeballs on those matches and try and raise the visibility of that part of the tournament in that condensed period. Albeit we don't have fans in the stadium, obviously it's a drawback for everybody, but we can try and make sure we amplify this as much as possible with digital, with our partners, with our broadcast partners and commercial partners as well.
Amazing. And I think, yeah, everyone is going to be so eager to see all of that content. And that's one of the things that during lockdown has really highlighted for us. And it's how the audiences want to engage so much more with the athletes. And we are certainly seeing that we can use that as an opportunity to really raise the profile of the role models within the sport. And I heard Beck Smith say on her session a couple of days ago that we need to get more familiarity with the characters in women's football. And so certainly during lockdown, that's what we've tried to do. We worked with you guys at UEFA to create a train at home content series using our Team Visa athletes. And then more recently, with Copper 90, as we created some Dear Football, love letters to football with our Team Visa players that were going to be at the Champions League. So really, really exciting time and lots of opportunities. But I think the first thing we can do is now look at the first poll, which was obviously, I think everyone can agree all of these are opportunities, but in terms of where people are seeing the biggest opportunity is media and broadcast. And I think that's no surprise, and that's definitely coming up as a recurring theme. But up until this point, and obviously that's an opportunity going forward, but up until this point, Kayleigh, we know that partners have contributed to the growth of women's football, but from your perspective, with the increase in those brands, there's had to be a change in the partnership model and what that looks like. So what do you think the catalyst moments have been, and how has that partnership model evolved?
For us, I mean, specific to partnerships, unbundling our women's football rights from the men's competitions was the first kind of key turning point for us. I think traditionally we always sold women's football alongside men's football. You bought the men's Champions League, you got the women's Champions League. But those assets were often left on the table in terms of activation, which we got a little bit of money in the bank for the women's competitions. It allowed us to run the competitions and to a good standard, but the activation part was missing. The brand support, the kind of focus on the women's game was not there. So that's been an area where that moment where we decided, and just decide overnight, obviously there was quite a bit of research and discussion happened around that moment, to unbundle and go to the market with a new rights package specific to the women's game. And a certain element of risk associated with that. Is that something that brands want to come in specifically on? To do that as well, though, we had to look at how do we bundle this. Obviously, women's football and the men's side sponsorship is such a media beast. That's, you mentioned that at the start, that sponsorship model is based on an exchange of media value that sport can create for brands. Now, in the women's game, we've managed to grow our media value to a sizable amount across Women's Champions League, Women's Euro, key moments, kind of peak moments across the year. But those moments haven't yet been throughout the season. The frequency of those moments is not quite as high as we have in the men's game yet. So we had to kind of look at how do we shape a package that allows us to have frequency for brands through the season. So from our perspective, we bundled the Women's Euro with the Women's Champions League final, with some of our youth competitions and futsal, but with our We Play Strong campaign and platform, which is our kind of 360-day a year content platform type approach, which allows us to look at participation in the girls' game. It allows us to look at the bigger, broader audience of women's football and talk about the game as a whole, as opposed to just the lens of a competition. So trying to essentially modernise those rights for the era that we're in, trying to make it much more focused on digital. We've tried to include in our packages elements like access to player image rights. So we've got players in our books that partners can access. We've got different events. We've got different types of platforms. So it's a slightly different looking package, certainly less reliant as a whole on pure media broadcast value, albeit still an important part, of course, but also allows us to look at other elements that we could bring into that package for partners in a new era, and also allow partners just to be part of this more broader cultural conversation around women's sport, women's rights, women's place in society, and how brands can use football to impact that, which so far, with the likes of yourselves and Nike and Esprit and a few others, Hublot and a few others to come in the coming months, it seems to have been attractive and something that brands do want to get involved in and commit to for the longer term.
Definitely, and you are seeing that number of partners increasing year on year. Karen, you retired after the FIFA World Cup last year, but you had quite a long playing career. You played for 18 years. So you must have seen quite a few changes with the level of interest from partners and sponsors. So what do you think on that? How much change has there been?
Well, I think when I first started playing, I don't think there was any partners. There wasn't really big sponsors. I don't think really anyone cared, if I'm honest. And then I think as England started to get to major tournaments, you saw sponsors and partners kind of drop in at key times, maybe a year before the tournament, and then as soon as it finished they would drop out. There wasn't really any consistent support, I would say. And what I've noticed since now, like you said, mentioned a few brands yourself, like Visa, 7-year partnership, it's incredible. Nike, Barclays are now part of WSL sponsored, and what it is it stops those peaks and troughs of coming in at the key moments and then dropping out. And how can the women's game ever really develop? With something like a 7-year plan like Visa have done, they've showed, look, we believe in the direction the women's game's going in. It shows confidence in the game, and it shows belief, and then that's massive for other brands as well. But I think the key thing that I've been impressed with is just that, and I know now I'm part of kind of the Visa family, as you'd say, but I think what I really liked about them is the fact that they're not just doing things in the vision of everybody, they're doing things behind the scenes as well. So something we'll talk about later on is the second half programme. But they're doing it for the right reasons and for the longevity. And I think if other brands can follow such a big brand like Visa, like Barclays and Nike, and keep kicking on, we'll stop these peaks and troughs, and the development of the game will just keep growing and growing.
Perfect. Yeah, I think obviously it's important to support the game as a whole, but then you've got the support of the individuals. So, Kim, for someone like yourself, what does it mean to have a partner on board just sponsoring you as an individual?
Yeah, it's all obviously great. I think, like I said, it's developed over the last 10, 15 years. Brands and partners are starting to have interest in the women's game, and it's obviously great to be a part of Visa. And it provides me with something away from playing, and to be able to contribute to women's football and women's sport in particular, but also society to give something back to the game, and to do something alongside my playing career. And hopefully, obviously I'm still playing now, but hopefully this partnership with Visa will then allow me to contribute past that, which will continue the growth of the game. And like Kaz mentioned just there, the second half is a programme I've been contributing with Liesel and Karen to provide that opportunity for players, which is empowers them and provides them with opportunity to improve themselves and to develop in different ways.
Totally. And I think as a partner, we have a responsibility to have a positive impact on the sport and the individuals, and to drive the conversation forward. So we all need to do more. But Karen, you touched on it briefly there, and so did Kim actually. But the second half is definitely something that I know we're both really proud to be creating at Visa. It's a career development program for female footballers. But in your words, can you summarise for anyone who in the audience hasn't heard of it? Can you just tell them what it is and why you think it's important?
Basically, it's a program. We're designing it for current and retired female footballers. And basically it's just trying to upskill and prepare those footballers for the transition out of football. We know that if you're lucky, football can give you a 15-year career, but at some point you will have to go and get a job, unfortunately. So the second half's showing you that you've got transferable skills, use them and potentially help upskill and prepare you for that next transition in whatever sector it may be.
And that's important just because I suppose, with such a short career and there are so many options out there for footballers to move into, and you're all incredibly talented and skilled people. Kim, as Karen mentioned there, it is a short career. So what difference do you think it will make for young players coming into this career to see it as a more viable career option, to have these sorts of programs in place?
Yeah, I think, when me and Karen were younger, I think football wasn't a career we thought we would make a living from. And I think players and young girls now have that. But I think also, like you just said, the careers are short. So there has to be, something alongside that, which, gives young girls opportunities away from football, so that they are planning and they do have something which they will do once they stop playing. And, I can speak for myself and give a little bit of insight into, my work with Visa. Obviously, I'm not coming to the end of my career, but maybe I'm a bit older than I once was. So, I think a lot about that. And my partnership with Visa has opened me a lot of doors and provided me with a lot of support, especially during this lockdown period, to look into that kind of second career and work alongside my playing and provide me with mentorship and work experience, and to give me just ideas really of what I may want to do. And I think, I'm one of those people who doesn't, maybe doesn't know what they want to do post football exactly. So having more opportunities gives you more choice. And I think, it's great for me to have that now, and then now for the future players within the game to have that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's so important, and partners have such a great opportunity to play a big role in supporting all of the players throughout the game. But in terms of the big opportunity, we know that media and broadcast is definitely coming through. So I just wanted to look at the second poll. And in terms of which area, you all think that partners could do more in, 61% think social media campaigns are the way forward in driving more focus for the women's game. Again, probably not a surprise. And I think we can all do more of that. And especially, we've got some fantastic tournaments coming up over the coming years. So we've got Champions League this year, and then next year Olympics, the following year the Women's Euros, and then FIFA Women's World Cup again. So to each of you really, what do you think, what would you like to see from the game as it develops? What's your ambition throughout those tournaments and outside of the tournaments as well? Kayleigh, coming to you first.
Oh, okay. Well, I suppose a few key areas on our side, if we look at our roadmap for the next few years, one of the key moments is going to be centralising the Women's Champions League. So really growing the club game, I think, is key. I think we can all agree that we've got a number of peaks and troughs with big competitions, and the World Cups and the Euros are great, and we've got them to a level now that they'll continue to grow, but they are substantial major events on the sporting calendar, and that's a fantastic showcase for the game. But we still have to raise the level of the club game through the season to try and get that into a bigger space. So from our side at UEFA, with the Women's Champions League centralising from the round of 16, which will be a new group stage, will allow us more clubs playing each other more frequently across Europe at a big level. I think we're seeing more and more of the big men's clubs coming into that space as well, which brings with it a fair amount of visibility and fan base. There's no doubt that fan base is transferable as well, so we want to see that. So building that package of that Women's Champions League, building the right broadcast model around that, so allowing that to be the right mix between, yes, we need free-to-air broadcast and paper TV broadcast reach and to maximise the reach of the competition. Social media and some of the new, more modern platforms play a big role in that as well. So how do we reach this younger audience? We need to nurture a new younger audience. We have a ready-made audience in this younger female player. You know, they can a lot of money investment going into raising participation levels, which is massively important. So making sure that we talk to these girls where they are, which is not necessarily watching TV, but might be on Snapchat or TikTok or any other platform in that space. So how do we make sure that we're in the right places to speak to the right people with the right messages, and making sure that they've got access to the game readily and that they know what it is? And that's a big part of the Women's Champions League centralisation project, is to try and find a bit of an appointment to view around the game. Because I think if you look at Women's Champions League in the past, yes, we've got a window where the matches have to be played, but they can be played at all different times. And then there's not one broadcaster, so you have to kind of dig to find, well, is that game on TV? Can I access that on Facebook? What time is it on at? Is it in the evening? Is it later at night? So even as somebody who's in the game, I find it hard sometimes to say, oh, how do I get access to this game? So trying to find a way where we do maximise TV rights sales and revenues from that space and the reach through partners. Anywhere that there isn't a match sold for rights, making sure that sits on an OTT platform somewhere or a club channel somewhere, so that there's a consistency to being able to access the game. And then, making sure that it's clear where those windows are. And I think what we've managed to achieve so far with the scheduling from season 21-22 is that there's certain windows in the season where men's football is not happening right before international matches, where there's a travelling period where we can put the women's game, and it will sit certainly on a European level. Obviously can't avoid every single match going on in the world, but certainly from a European level we can make sure that we're giving the game the best opportunity possible to maximise its reach to an audience and trying to attract more viewers and give it the spotlight that it deserves. So for me, the club game is huge in there, and of course the Euro is a massive focus for us in 22. I've got another year to build my plan around that now, so along with the LOS. So we'll have a bit of pressure to do even more with that with you guys. But yeah, that's a huge moment, and that decision to move that tournament is pivotal as well, because the whole premise was giving that tournament its own summer, its own spotlight, and that was never going to happen if we left it last year. So moving it to 22, okay, there's a little risk of a momentum drop. We just all have to work hard together as partners and as rights holders and players to keep momentum going for another year as best we can and raising that level, but making sure that we hit a summer where we own that space for that period of time, that the women's game is the pinnacle of that football calendar that summer. I think it's hugely important for the game to have that platform. So yeah, continue to grow the big moments, but really try and catch up in between bits. I think for partners that's key as well. The more frequently, I suppose, you guys can activate your rights and be out there talking, using your rights, the better it'll be for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kim, coming to you, what's your ambition from a player perspective? What would you like to see?
Yeah, I think just generalising, I think it's for all of us who are involved and invested in the game, it's to be ambitious and to push boundaries and overcome challenges and prejudices that have been there in the past. And I think it's from players like myself, from former players, partners, UEFA, media, to just all do more and demand more and to keep pushing that. And I think we'll continue to see the game grow, undoubtedly.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen, to you?
I think I'd love to see it be on terrestrial TV, women's football now. I think the TV rights will be coming up hopefully soon. In the league in itself, the WSL, I'd love to see it on mainstream TV. And then, like you said, the three, the Euros, the Olympics, the World Cup, massive marker stones to get the women's game in people's vision. But I think with the likes of big brands like we've spoken about, it gives us the credibility. And I think if the credibility is there, people will want to have it, broadcaster will want to have it on TV. And you saw recently that even games on BBC, one just recently gone past 6-7 million people watched in lockdown. So it's incredible. So for me, I would love to see it continually be put on mainstream terrestrial TV to really develop and grow.
Yeah. Kayleigh, there's a question in the poll that I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were. there's obviously lots more sponsors continuing to invest in the women's game, and support women's football. But how do we show women's football not as a cause, but as a profitable product?
Well, I mean, I suppose that's the brands themselves have already been showing in the last few years that is the case. There's been a number of reports from different brands who have invested that show we've sold more shirts than anybody expected us to. We've sold more tickets. We've raised the GDP of our country in the case of the World Cup over the period of hosting a competition. So I think we're starting to see that commercial argument definitely sits there. And as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, the media value of our big peak moments is significant now. The value that we can give back to partners is genuinely significant. See, the frequency of that is just more. We struggle a little bit to try and build that through the season. So that's where the focus is. So I don't think it's I don't think we have any sponsors who see our partnerships over 7 years with the figures that we're talking as just good causes to put money into, or as a more CSR style project. Like the value of these deals is, I don't see any business having signed that off purely on that basis. But I think it also does show you that the CSR is more mainstream now. It's actually value. Brands are looking to be value to society. You don't get away with just selling a product these days and not caring about the consequences or the people who buy it. So being able to align with something like women's football that can showcase at the best women, performing at their highest, achieving the best, being super role models, being, really as a mother of 2 young girls, like I love my girls looking up to girls and women who play football, because there's just so much good in that space. Like, I don't think it's all just nice and rosy about, this is just a good space to be in and a nice thing to do. There's a value there to be struck. There's definite signs now, strong signs of consistent return of investment from these packages. Maybe I'm just selling them too cheaply, but we'll figure that out in the next few years. And the benefit of actually the world is changing. Purpose-led brands is where we're at, and it's not a case of you have a couple of people in your business who look after CSR and that's a nice thing you do with some extra money at the end of the tax year type approach. This is where brands are at these days. It's about being a purpose-driven brand, and that's what women's football, I think, is in a really, really strong position to capitalise on, that we can deliver so much in that space for brands while having a commercial hat on and understanding that they're businesses that need to deliver.
Absolutely. No, I agree with everything you've said there, and definitely that's the values and the opinions we share at Visa. So yeah, where we're just about coming to the end now. So I kind of wanted to wrap up and thank you all for your comments. It's always fascinating to hear your point of view. But I think coming back to the topic of partnerships, what I think we've learned is that it's important to be innovative, particularly with the rights, what that partnership model looks like, the assets, and the content we're putting out there. But also, media broadcast is a huge opportunity that's definitely coming through really, really loudly from everybody. So partners probably need to do more to push that. And lastly, I think to be a really good partner, it's important to be committed and to have those shared values and beliefs with the sport or the property you work with. And it's important to not just focus on those key events, which obviously are important in their own right, but to support throughout the duration and support with the players as well.
Liesel, thank you so much. Really appreciate you directing the discussion so expertly. Yeah, and just reprising some of those themes, especially if you heard from the FIFA paper about the doom and gloom caused by coronavirus surrounding the women's game, saying that it posed an almost existential threat. Well, that was a stark warning, perhaps, but one that we know that there is a solution to, and that is to continue to back the women's game even more, go over and above, overcompensate. Now is not the time to bail out. Now is not the time to back out. Now is the time to go even stronger. And those strong statements are really echoed by all of your speakers today. Karen mentioning that consistency that brands give in terms of support to avoid the peaks and troughs, how you might take a bit of interest around a World Cup or a Euros or a She Believes Cup, but then you might fade away again. Well, actually, that will help with that. This excellent initiative of the second half program that Karen's spoken about so well, and Kim as well, talking about how things are changing. From Kayleigh, that granular detail about the organisational level with the UEFA Women's Champions League and the last 16, the rights broadcast model, being pushing the right messages to the right people in the right places. I took away from that was excellent with obviously the right kind of platform, Snapchat and TikTok, etc. And yes, I mean more and more besides in terms of being ambitious, pushing the boundaries, overcoming challenges and prejudices. And I'm sure that we're moving in the right direction. But as we all said there, more still needs to be done, and I'm sure it will be. Thank you so much to all of you for your contributions to the panel today. We really, really appreciate it. I hope we'll see you in person as well sometime soon. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to switch on women's football to improving the game through technology. And we're going to see it from a very unique perspective, that of the referee, and perhaps the most famous of the lot. Pierluigi Kayleigh will be in conversation with Gabriella Marcotti, and that is coming next.